Feeling trapped by all the stuff? Can't keep up? No time to think or plan? Has the rush and gush of modern life got you trapped?
Slow is the new fast. Slow is the new fast.
Slow is the new fast.
Set your coordinates. It's Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. With your host, the VIP coach, John Davidson.
This is JD, and this is the VIP coach. And I am so excited to be with you. This is a new podcast, and you are listening to the first ever podcast of Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. You know, this show today is going to be about why I came up with this topic and what you're going to be able to get from this show. I don't know how long it's going to go, but I am so excited about Mach 0, what it means to me, what it means to you, what it could mean to our future. I think it's a huge concept. So listeners from the Radical Creativity podcast, we did 25 episodes on radical creativity, how to get yourself freed up and radically creative if you own a business, how to get yourself more and more access to using your personal gift as the center of gravity to your business, right? Focusing on work that's fun, enjoyable, inspiring, and significant and valuable to other people. That was radical creativity, and it was about clearing the decks for action, getting the capability, the maneuverability, the liberation to focus on creating what you really, truly desire. So, radical creativity, we're finished with that. That was a great chapter in our podcast, and now we enter into a new one. So welcome to Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. You know, you hear the title, right? You hear the title. You're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're ready to shoot to the next level. You've been at this a while, you want to make a jump in your career, and as you've been listening to us, you've been probably implementing some of the tools. All the tools that we talk about on these podcasts are directly applied in our parallel VIP coach program. We've been coaching entrepreneurs for the last 15 years. I have over 17,000 logged hours in coaching sessions with these entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm going on my 500th coaching client at this point. We coach all over the planet, but primarily our clients are in North America, in 3 countries. And these are a very interesting breed, right? These kind of entrepreneurs that are in the VIP coach have a very special way of kind of taking the world in. You know, they see the world as a place where they can create dreams. One of their core purposes is to bring dreams into life. That's why they live, that's why they breathe. The second thing is that our clients choose freedom. They didn't get into their business just to make a bunch of money and have great earning power. They want to be creatively free, which means that they have the decisiveness, the ability to live life on their own terms. And that's a lifestyle choice. It's about personal responsibility. They choose to become the predominant creative force in their life. Now that means that they're not reacting and responding to just circumstances. They organize action around choices they make about future outcomes that they seek to create, instead of reacting and responding better to the circumstances upon them. And this gives them a definite edge. It gives them an advantage. They realize very quickly that simplicity is about knowing what matters most. It's about arranging your life around the non-essentials because you choose to. Granted, we all live in a complex world, folks. Life has gotten a lot faster. Today, we have a love affair with speed like never before. What happened to depth? What happened to the intimacy with life? What happened to the savoring? What happened to just living life? We're all on the way somewhere. And over the years, and especially the last 5 years, I've noticed that things have gotten dramatically sped up, that we are caught in this rush and gush stream of life. And I talk to entrepreneurs 5 sessions a day. I'm on 100 coaching sessions a month. And there's a common thread that's been weaving through those sessions. And that goes like this. JD, I have made normal in my life what you call, JD, the if factor. I and F. F is in Frank. And they say, I so get what the if factor is. The if factor means incessant freneticness. Incessant freneticness. The if factor is that we all, in some way, we have gotten used to this velocity and this pace of life being normal. And so one of my clients called it skimming. We just kind of skim from peak to peak. We skim, but we don't go into the valleys. We skim along our family space. We skim along our health. We skim along our business opportunities. We skim along the present moment. And we just, boop, there we go. We ride right by. And so life becomes a series of skimming through stuff rather than slowing down and savoring and really tasting and really living the life that's here. And so I invite you on a journey with me into exploring this thing called Mach Zero. You know, as I tell it to you, I can almost hear Mach Zero as if it were a person just sitting in front of me. And Mach Zero has some news for me and says, John, you know, there's a whole group of people, there's a whole bunch of people that are not paying attention. They're not focused to what they really love in life. They're not focused on really living in the present moment. They're not really connected in any way to some future dream or something that really matters to them. And so I began to think about that very, very deeply. You know, I began to think about how we are living the unlived life, as a business owner especially. So my bias or my bent is that as a business owner, an entrepreneur who has the fundamental ability to choose your own terms, right? Because you get paid by going out in the marketplace and creating value for someone. And so you have basically 4 freedoms. You have the freedom to choose how you want to spend your time. You can choose how you want to create your ideal week, or your ideal year, or your ideal month, or your ideal minute. You can focus on the way you choose to use the time you have. You can arrange your priorities in such a way that you follow and remain obedient to your priorities if you choose. So the first freedom is the entrepreneur listening to this program as you realize that you do have something to say about your time. But as I say that to you, and I come back to Mach Zero, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that there's a constant set of vampires, things, stuff, low-lying essentials that are concocted out of this pace, out of this dramatic demand that we're all in, that we don't have the capacity. It's more and more dangerous for us to stop and think. I had a guy tell me yesterday who came in the program after 90 days. He said, JD, you know, these 90 days, I got to hand it to you. This has really been the most in my life that I've had a chance to really think. And I said, Alan, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, this is a chance where I see how incredibly vital it is that I take a skycam view of what I'm really doing. And I've had to confront myself in realizing that most of the priorities that I was spending my time on weren't really my true priorities. And that I was being a slave, I was being invented by life instead of inventing myself or inventing the way I wanted to come at life. And he saw that. He saw how slow is the new fast. Slow is the new fast. We can all operate at a Mach 5, a Mach 10, a Mach 11, a Mach 100 life. But what does that really do? Does it really, really solve the problems that we have? Does it really get us somewhere? Does it make us any happier? Does it bring us any more joy? A lot of people are finding out that speed is the real problem. We are incessantly frenetic in our life. We're caught in a way that we're blinded to the unintended consequences that the fast life is causing us. We're building up, we're withdrawing from our life bank account, we're shortening our lives this way, we are so overworked, we are so busy, we're living in larger houses than we ever did before, we have fewer people living in them, we have a world that is greatly, greatly abundant, we have just too much stuff to pay attention to, and now we're getting on the bandwagon, being connected to everybody, and now we have to pay attention to everyone's life as if everyone was a news channel now, right? Have you noticed? Not as if your life wasn't enough, as if you didn't have enough news in your own life. Now you have to look at what's newsworthy about another person's life, even to the point where they're doing things that really aren't that exciting to look at. And so why are we paying attention to trying to help people see how cool our life is? Why are we trying to let other people into our life that are looking into our life? There's a lot of disclosure there today. There's a lot of nakedness today of letting people look into our lives. And so during Mach Zero, we're going to be talking more and more about this. We're going to be talking about some opinions about this from entrepreneurs that comment in our program about what Facebook is doing for their business or not doing at all, whether social media, how they're using it, what's really up there, right? How are we beginning to use this sort of collective creativity where we're all connecting into something and we're becoming socially creative rather than just individual creators? We're learning how to horizontally connect and create. So more about that in a moment. So I'm describing these conditions of the if factor, the incessant freneticness, and then we've got pressures going on around the world. The global economy is causing all kinds of individual trends and changes that now, in order to compete, we have to fall back on really what makes us unique and authentic, what we're being pressed to be, folks, to really stand out and remain successful and maintain our continuity in business has become artists. That the engineer as a business person is dying. The automator, the enterprise that's just automated, duplicated, and repeatable is the RIP of business. And then we have the economist who's trying to remain profitable, but in order for us to keep up with all these norms, we have so much pimp factor, trying to impress people that we don't like around us by buying things that we really don't need, overextending ourselves on things that we don't have money to spend on. Who are we really trying to impress? We're trying to create an impressive lifestyle rather than create a fulfilling life. And so more and more individuals are getting caught and trapped in this milieu of incessant freneticness and getting caught in this wheel of life that just continues to spiral out of control. And it's a rich, very enriching vortex that we get caught in, and then we get a chokehold on us when we really can't get to anything that's important. We try to, but we just can't get to it. And despite all that, maybe the thrill of just so much going on, we want to remain non-idle. We want to get out of being bored. And so we've become such consumers. And instead of being consumers, I'd like to take a chance on bringing more creators into the world. I think we need more creators, people that learn how to influence another and influence something and bring it into the world. And this brings me to a key point about you, the entrepreneur, that confidence is sine qua non for you. It's an absolute necessity. Confidence is about where you can put your attention. Confidence and freedom are very similar in that respect, that you can direct your attention however you want to when you have confidence. Confidence, confidere, which means with fidelity, with self-trust. So when an entrepreneur is having a lot of breakdowns, messes, failures, things are not going well, oftentimes they get so far in their head that they cook themselves and they become so self-destructive that it begets itself, and then they get into a death spiral. And so they get more into this things spinning out of control where they just are, it's like throwing a flurry at things, but you just can't seem to get any traction. And a lot of it is because our ambition has come into conflict with our true values. But more and more, as we grow up in life, as we evolve, we're learning that we do not have to remain distanced to the values that we hold sacred. That we can organize our lives around our deepest ambitions, our deepest meanings and longings. And they're not just dreams. We're not talking about just get-rich schemes. We're talking about things that really, 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 truly give you goosebumps and make your heart beat. And I know a lot of it has to do with how you belong to everybody else and what kind of impact that you're making on the world. So you can rethink your life at any time. You know, everything's up for grabs when you become a creator. When you're a consumer, everybody owes you something, right? Someone has to be giving you value in order to. Everything is qualified through you. Everything has to become good enough or not good enough. And so we become a consumer where we're expecting something. We're expecting something to be performed for us, to be serviced to us. And so we get out of alignment here. We're not citizens in a society, in a community. What communing means being held together. We become consumers, and the world kind of has us on the hook. And we're more and more getting caught in kind of imposing our consumer expectations on the course of our lives, again, instead of choosing to be a creator. And so I came up with Mach 0 kind of out of these set of conditions that I saw, and my intention is through this show is, number one, is to slow you down. What does that mean? Slow you down means to take stock. Slow you down means to remember, to not get amnesia on what really does matter to you. And that means that you consider an alternative future that you truly want to affect, that you consider a future that does in fact matter to you. That's a very subjective space. It doesn't have to matter. It's not what should matter. It's what does matter to you. And so you cut the divide between kind of the current self that you have, where you actually are, and the future self that you would occupy or become. And so part of how you organize your choices at Mach 0 is you collapse that divide and you connect with some kind of future order, future self, future set of conditions that create a line of sight for you from where you are to where you want to be. And then your job is to bring your decisions, actions, and communications today into alignment with that future. In other words, be consistent with it in your daily, weekly habits that you go about. And so it becomes an underlying structure that abandons non-essentials, and anything that is in accord with, in a harmony with, in agreement with, that supports this future self that you connect with and operate in the current moment. Well, this is what we're talking about. It's a different way of organizing your behavior. It's a different way, a different flow pattern, there you go, of how energy and information is flowing in the current moment through you. That you can connect with the future and operate from it, and you can see that the current moment is how the future is unfolding every single second. And so we lay the path down as we walk on it. We lay the path down as we walk on it. So we're going to be taking a break. I hope I've got your attention and got you intrigued about how we're heading into Mach 0. When I get back, I'm going to talk about 3 core commitments that compose the legwork, the footwork, the body of technique around Mach 0. So stay with us. Welcome to the show. I'll be right back.
It's Monday morning. I'm drained.
You've got mail.
Look at this. It's the Monday Advantage video. Yeah! Now I can get past the distractions and implement something new.
The Monday Advantage. It's that easy. Just subscribe free for a limited time at highlevelperformance.com. Every Monday, launch the week with fresh tools, giving you the right state of mind, focus, and confidence. See what becoming a gifted boss and serial creator is all about. Subscribe today at highlevelperformance.com. That's highlevelperformance.com. And start enjoying your Monday Advantage today. Grow your business and grow as a human being with these captivating books authored by the VIP coach himself, John Davidson. The Day I Built My Barbecue is about creative freedom. Learn how you can not only live well, but also grow a thriving business at the same time. John shows you his step-by-step technique with the principles, strategies, and steps to move from a business operator to a business owner. The Day You Build Your Barbecue is the day we all wish for. Totally free of distractions. Totally available to living well. Fully present. Then don't miss Unstoppable You. It's about creative value. When we do what we love and love what we do, we discover ways to make our business more fun and monetize our passions. Through stories, tools, and steps, this book will help you bring something to the world that no one else can and bridge your most unique talents to the deepest aspirations you have of the future. And stand in the presence of all you are. It's about creative purpose. What does it mean to live on purpose? How do we work with the mystery that life presents us at every moment? In this book, John shows us through the silent spaces in life how to connect with our innermost sacred projects and passages. You'll learn how to bring the work, language, and presence of the soul into everything you do. Visit highlevelperformance.com to pick up any of these books in paperback or Kindle editions today. That's highlevelperformance.com. Having a life where you have the creative freedom to do what you love and to offer the world something that only you can bring to the table. That is the world of high-level performance with John Davidson. That is the world of radical creativity. That is the world that you can be a part of when you realize all that is holding you back is you. Begin the journey through one-on-one coaching that gives you the finesse for business and lifetime achievement, and find your place on the roadmap to high-level performance today. Visit highlevelperformance.com. From go time to slow time. Slow is the new fast. Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. With VIP coach John Davidson.
Welcome back to the show. This is JD, and you're listening to Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. And we've been talking about kind of the composition of what got me to Mach 0. We've talked about abundance and this if factor, the incessant freneticness that's happening in the world, and that our one thing we're here to do is to slow you down to consider a future that really matters to you. And I'd like to get into 3 particular commitments that I'm devoting my life to all entrepreneurs that I can influence live by. I have the strongest conviction from my own experience, my own life, and 15 years that I bring to this space, that these 3 commitments are a fundamental place, a fundamental growth. How do I say it? It's a growth structure. It is a life, sort of a life work for the entrepreneur to reach the highest quality of expression that he or she can exude at any moment. I believe that's leadership. Leadership is the continuous access to the highest quality of action that one can access at any moment. It's a continuous expression. So when I say that to you, you hear that there are connections that cause us as entrepreneurs to move at a very fundamental level. And what I've been struck by is where the movement is coming from. So when I started in this business, I learned that movement came from goals. And what struck me about goal setting with entrepreneurs is that they were able to grant power to the guiding ideas versus the power being in them. Now, I was raised around human potential. That's how I started in this business. I believed for many, many years that the power rested in the human being. Now, I'm on a completely different plane. I don't think power rests in human beings. I think power rests outside human beings, and that something outside of a human being is evocative enough that it provokes or evokes action in the human being. It's an inspiration. It's something in spirit that enters, and from the external or from the context in which the entrepreneur is in the water, so to speak, that they're the fish swimming in, that something starts to internalize from something external. And then that matches something that deeply matters internally that compels or impels the entrepreneur into action. So the first commitment is the commitment to the future self. It means that we cut the divide between the current self and the future self. You see, when I'm talking to you now, I have 2 selves that are listening to me. There's one self that's kind of evaluating, interpreting, and adding meanings to what I'm saying. And that self in you that's listening to me is the one from the past. And that self is composed of concepts that are made from information that you've gathered from the past. That includes your mental constructs. It includes all the observable data that you've had up to this point. And your brain has been a storehouse. Now, the word story is interesting because story comes from the root storehouse. It means we're storing something up. And then we tell ourselves a story about what's going on, and that story is fiction, not fact. So what your brain is in the gear of at any moment, if your awareness isn't regulating it, your brain is likely to fill in the gaps and make assumptions about what is going on versus what could be actually going on. So there's a difference between what you're inclined to see in your biases and what is actually there. So this brings me to this point of what would it mean to you if you were to say, okay, I've got this current self. It's composed of all of these mental constructs and concepts. I have these models, these representations of the world around me, of the people I think that are around me and what they're thinking or what I'm thinking of them. And then I have something I think about myself. And if you could imagine, you're kind of walking down the street with a thought bubble that's above your head, and all the content that exists in that thought bubble are what are originating your actions. And this is where we get into a real fix, is oftentimes the perceptions and expectations and interpretations that our current self imposes on the world are completely and totally inaccurate. In fact, they're just editorials. They're not news. It's like we do bad journalism, right? We make up stories about what's going on, and we add something to reality instead of relating directly with our immediate experience. And so I saw entrepreneurs time and time again get into real complexity in their organization where real human systems are playing out. Things like triangulation, where they become unintentionally adversarial with a partner and they think they have really good intentions, but it ends up being a real problem. Or just all kinds of things in their relationship with money. Just everywhere you look in their performance environment, there's always a chance that their thought is going to outlaw or ambush them in some way. I'm not saying thought is the enemy. It's not, because your brain is doing what, as an organism, it's supposed to do. But the challenge we have is memory, is that we accumulate and contaminate and pollute the current moment because we lay down a veneer over the current moment with our own frameworks. And oftentimes those frameworks are the very things that cause the limits or the complexity that we're in. And so we have to be able to escape those kind of frameworks. How do we do it? We have to raise our levels of awareness. That awareness at this point is a creative force. That perception is generative. I'm not saying that you create your own reality. Reality is reality. It has a wild card nature to it. You're not that powerful, right? But you have a current self, but you also have a future self. And how I see you is that you are always communing back and forth between this future self and this current self. And sometimes you're obedient to this future self, where you're acting on behalf of a future that is unknown and yet you truly desire it. And other times you're repeating the habits, the automatic nature from these habits that you have, this information, concepts. You have habitual judgments that you kind of put over things, and sometimes you're able to kind of outsmart those judgments and take a closer look, but other times we're not. Most of the time in the human world, in this if factor, things are so frenetic that to stop and really think and to get that kind of control, to get that kind of emotional intelligence, there's a lot at stake there. But it's oftentimes the very fundamental thing that we have to look at, because we do enact ourselves into some very complex systems, human systems, and we are all, quite frankly, interdependent. That none of us come into the real properties of who we are until we interact with someone else. That we are a product of the patterns of interaction where energy and information are shared between us. And that composes kind of how we act and interact with other people. We realize that we are not independent. We realize that we are vulnerable and that we have to dare ourselves to be wrong. We have to dare ourselves to be uncertain. And if we do that, then we can hold the space and listen for disconfirming information. We can then question the data of our own beliefs. We can step back and see the difference between when we're occupied by our current self, under the spell of it, or not. And if we're really choosing to create a future that we want, and then through action, through successive action, through failure and success, through a series of experiments, we begin to realize the capacity needed to have that future. That's the creative process. But in schools, we're not taught the creative process. This is not on the list of priorities of most teachers, right? Teachers are helping our students prepare for the workforce. They're not looking into our children saying, well, you have gifts, let's figure out how to build something around it. They're preparing people to be performers, and it's based on an interesting assumption, and that is, I know what makes you adequate. And if that's true, then I assume that I know what doesn't. And so we have a representation of what we feel is keeping score for kids. Like, well, if you do this, you do that. And what it's doing is it's robbing the humanity of our children. And then I get them later in life when they get into adult education, continuing education with me, and then we have to unwind all that because they bring all that to the table. So what I'm interested in doing is cutting the divide constantly with the current self and the future self, and helping you step into that place, step into that territory of your future self, and trust that with your life. And you're going to need to bring your own gifts with you, and this demands that you know your blessings, that you know that one thing about you that's non-interchangeable, your fingerprint, your own voice, and we can talk about that later in the show. We've talked about personal gift from no hype allowed to radical creativity, and so we're going to bring it along here because I think this is a huge center of gravity, probably the one thing next to something else that you should be organizing your life around, which is a personal gift, a superior skill that you have a passion for. And so in order for you to build the bridge to the distant city of what the future is, you must summon these personal gifts because they melt barriers and they help the world see the opportunity of you. This has to do with creative value, which is the second commitment. So the first commitment is creative freedom. And creative freedom is this commitment to melt the barrier between the current self and the future self. It means to live by intention. It means to live on purpose. It means to live forward into the mystery of the future and yet hold our desires and learn from current reality as we go. Experiment, fail forward fast, use failures as assets, and we have to learn how to remove our identity from that process to make those kind of adjustments on the way to what we want to create. This is not the law of attraction. I'm not talking about wishing for something in a catalog and seeing it poof, go. I'm not a big fan of it. I think that you've got to really take an honest look at yourself, take an honest inventory of your own life in order to know How to Make Life Your Teacher, and the law of attraction doesn't have that built into it. So just wishing for something is not enough. Things happen in your life because you take strategic action. Things happen in your life because your levels of awareness, you're so keenly aware of current reality that you're able to have a relationship with it. And so you have to take your identity out of it in order for you to see it from a place that becomes an advocate, not an adversary. So more on that later. The second commitment is about your relationship to others. It's the relationship between self and other. So if we think about the first commitment as the vertical connection, kind of the north-south of moving from the moment to the ascent, moving up. This one has to do often with kind of going down. This one has to do with going across. And it means moving from our head to our chest. It involves creating at the level of connections that we make. You know, in organizational life today, a lot of teams are formed around kind of shared ideas. They form a shared understanding of each other. They become more intimate with each other by having good dialogues together and helping each other kind of arrive at clarity through the collective. Humble inquiry, asking questions, being curious about the other. And it involves a great part of our own nature, and it means our capacity to understand. It means we have to kind of leave our first-person orientation of how the world affects us to understanding what's in the world outside of what we can understand. And so that involves an opening of the heart. This is not easy to do for a lot of us because our hearts have been injured over time. We've felt abandonment throughout our life. We've been rejected throughout our life. We've been betrayed throughout our life. We've had people do malicious things to us. Let's face it, there's a lot of bad people in the world. But these things are often, the wounds that we get are often the openings to our greatest gifts. And so what we encourage our clients to do is to learn how to bypass their voices of cynicism and disconnection and be vulnerable enough to be courageous and dare themselves into understanding others first before they make snap judgments, right? Or they start to disconnect and withdraw, but instead really help the world change them by occupying more of a non-defended heart, an open heart. And this is very hard work. It's not work on yourself. It's more about understanding what's already there. This is a door that's been open to you the whole time. But what you've done is you've created your own prison bars. You've become prisoner of your own machine. And what happens over life is more and more as we turn these situations we didn't expect, they become very harmful injuries that sometimes we bring forward for years and years and years. And then those injuries turn into contemptuousness, bitterness, cynical, as if we had a 10-inch condom around us and we couldn't feel the pulse of life. We just get away from the breath of life. We stop feeling the very thing in life where life, right behind the mystery of life, is meaning and service and something really dynamic, but we just can't sense it. We can't go to that field because we're just not available to it. We don't make room in us. And so this involves empathy and empathic listening and reaching across lines and lowering walls and inquiring into what other people are about. So that's commitment number 2, is cutting the divide between self and other. And the third one is cutting the divide between self and whole. That we realize that we are in a universe that is irrevocably interconnected. Just the other day, I was going into my email, and I was thinking about someone that I hadn't called in the last 6 months. I was calling to order a list, a sales list. And as I thought more and more about it, I was looking into the email, my phone rang. Lo and behold, it was that person on the phone. Now, how is it possible that that person called me right on the minute that I was thinking about them? And that was the first time I actually thought about them in 6 months, and I hadn't even talked to them since that point. How is that possible? We begin to realize that our perceptions, our intentions, that when we are exercising our consciousness, when we are going there, that our attention somehow summons something in more of a grid-like fashion, that something is very connected to the whole. And that in some way, the whole has to inform us, an actor who takes the place of being a part. That we are a part of an existing whole. And that what we must do is find emerging qualities that are in our lives, runways, opportunities, things that we sense very deeply are ready to start, ready to happen. And we challenge ourselves to step into those possibilities. And this has to do with kind of moving down even deeper into our ground of being, down into our soul. The second would be the heart, and the first commitment would be the open mind. But this has to do with our open will, not the little puny will, not the self-will that we impose on the world, but more of a letting go and letting come, of surrender and holding the space for possibilities that are really living through us rather than us bringing something into life. It's the invisible and the visible working in common cause. And so we have to go down into something in order to go up. We have to make a descent before we go back up into the ascent. And oftentimes it may mean that we do let go of our judgment or our cynicism, but most often it's our fear, and that we have fear of the unknown, and we're very concerned with what's around the corner. So what would life be like if you were to be able to activate, like a button, these three commitments of operating from the whole, of the emerging possible future that is standing in need of you in terms of purpose and right place, of being able to connect with others in a horizontal way so that those lights turn on, that those collective powers start to turn up into social reality creations. And then you have this self-to-self, this deep intention that you have about what you'd like to create. I find that when creators are so open that way with their mind, their heart, and their will, when they begin to put forth intentions, the universe in an interesting way brings unforeseeable forces to their aid. I don't know how it works, but it's like a light switch. You just have to turn it on. It just does. What Mach 0 is about is finding that eye of the needle, is the thread that goes through all of these. And one of the ways to get to it is through practices in stillness. It means that we establish a sense of intentional stillness and grounding in our life, that we find our center for stillness, whether it's in our home life, our work life, or all the way around. Whether it's walking, sleeping, wherever it is, we find stillness, and it becomes an access point. That we re-enchant ourselves to the stories that we heard when we were young, the stories about magical things, things that were beyond our understanding, and that we start to understand the story of our own life and what is unfolding, and we participate in that enactment from the whole. And that we move again. We start to move ourselves into different courses of action. We move our physical body. We move our minds. We move. We have movement. And we arrange new order and activity and patterns in our lives. We rearrange the flow patterns of energy and information toward a future we seek, connecting to others, and then connecting from the whole. And establishing daily rituals and practices so that we can do this. This isn't living the ordinary life. We all have that. We all have to fill out forms and have taxes. But this is about living an ecstatic life, where we leave our current position, we escape our current position, and move towards something that has more meaning, perhaps a lot more service in it, and also allows us to live forward into the mystery, something that is unfolding through us moment by moment, as if there was a sacred project in us, and all we have to do is hear its distant signals and then turn toward it. But we have to use our bodies as antennas to do that. So I invite you on this journey into implementing, taking delivery of, installing this new software into your way forward. The three commitments. This is the first show, folks. I hope you enjoyed it today. Take some notes on this, and remember, implement the one thing above all else in this program that would make life simple and something else unnecessary. And that means one idea that only you heard for you is what you need to implement. Take one thing and put it back into your life. Go to highlevelperformance.com. You can call us at 714-912-9261. Go online and visit us at highlevelperformance.com. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for listening to the show.
For more tools, go to highlevelperformance.com. Better business, better life. Fast growth, keeping things simple. Or visit us on Facebook. Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. Set boundaries, focus your attention, and maintain a positive state of mind. Hire a VIP coach to help you. Call 714-912-9261.